Hello and welcome to another Solana tutorial. Today we're gonna talk about extending programs. Because last week a new feature was activated which now allows us to give existing programs more space. It has been out on DevNet for a while, but it's now available on mainnet as well, so you can finally resize your programs and add more functionality. You're not limited by the initial size anymore, which is great. And today I want to have a look at how that works, and before we'll discuss why you even want to do that, and even before that we're going to talk about feature flags and what they are, because we haven't talked about feature flags and how Solana does like changes. So I want to talk a little bit about that in the beginning, and then we're going to have a closer look at the program extend command, which actually I have no idea how it actually works, but you know me, I'll just have a look at it, we have a look at it together, and we learn together. That's how we do here. But maybe let's really start this with a discussion about feature flags. Because here's the thing, Solana constantly evolves. It's constantly being worked on, there are constantly new features being added and improvements being made. And those improvements can come in two ways. Either it's just like a performance improvement of some kind where suddenly the validators need less memory or something. So those are changes that do not affect consensus, aka it does not matter which version you're on, the validator will work in any case. But then there are those consensus breaking changes where we actually change something that is relevant for the voting process. Let's do a simple example here. Let's suppose that we want to change that transactions don't need to pay a fee anymore, right? We remove the base fee. I'm not saying that that's ever gonna happen, but let's assume that we wanted to do that. So in version 1.68, we still charge base fees, and then in version 1.69, we don't charge base fees anymore. So we've developed this feature, it's in 1.69, random version number that doesn't exist yet. And then validators can update their version to support this. But then we'll have a problem, because in the old version, the fees are required, so not having a fee is an invalid state transition. So a validator with the old version will not confirm any blocks from a validator with a new version. And because not all the validators update in the exact same time, there's always some overlap, somebody's always early, somebody's always late. And so to allow for those changes to happen all at once, we use feature gates. And the way this works is that as soon as a certain number of stake has been moved to the new version, the 1.69 in our example, then this feature will be scheduled, so it gets on the activation schedule, and that says at which epoch boundary is a feature activated. So then when we reach that epoch, in the time before, we were still charging those fees, and then when the next epoch starts, the feature gets activated and we stop charging those fees to ensure that all the validators are on the same page about this change. Obviously, at that point, anybody with a version lower than 1.69 will just stop working because they won't accept those blocks. So everybody got to update. But yeah, that's the concept of feature gates. And that's how we do updates on Solana. Consensus breaking updates. Not all the updates. Some updates can just be rolled out immediately as soon as you deploy the version. So yeah, I would suggest we have a look at that. Feature gate activation schedule. Perfect. Since there might be more feature gates per version, there will be a priority list, and it's gonna be rolled out in the same order as we did it on testnet. Because on testnet we try out those feature gates and activation, right? Yeah, so that's how they make the schedule with all the feature gates. And that's why it also takes a while. We don't activate all of them at once. We do feature gate per feature gate. So it takes a few epochs for a certain feature to be activated. We're still waiting on a few. Let's have a look at that. Oh, and what I mentioned earlier, that the old version is then not supported anymore, that we call the version floor. Apparently, I read that the first time, but yeah, that's a cool name actually. So that's the minimum required version for running a validator on that cluster. Currently on mainnet, that's 1.16.17. So we only set the floor when 95% of stake adopts this version, and then activations will begin. So once we reach 95%, we wait 2 more epochs, and then we start with activations. So current schedule. Okay, so features are activated on testnet, then devnet, and then on mainnet. They are all activated already. And they are apparently to be activated. Solana feature status to get the ones which are already activated. So let's try this Solana feature status. Solana features status. So this is devnet now, right? Bit smaller for you to see. So I think this is devnet now. And there we see which ones are active since when, and then which ones are inactive, and those are the ones that are next to be activated. We are on 1.17.5 on devnet. In terms of stake, that's 99%, but devnet is a bit easier to allow that. Let's check out the same for mainnet. Mainnet has those features, and we already see it here. Hold on. Active since epoch 532, enable BPF upgradable loader extend program instruction. And that's the one that we'll have a look at today. The extend program instruction. Because the BPF upgradable loader, that's one of those native programs that is like essentially part of Solana itself, not a program that is just deployed. It's literally part of the operating system. So in order to make changes to that program, we need a version update. And since that's a consensus breaking change, if one of those programs changes, then obviously we need a feature gate. And that's the one. And it's active since a few epochs ago. Where are we now? We are now in 534. So 2 epochs ago that got enabled. And you know, there are still a bunch more to be activated, which is quite interesting. Here we see the version. Most of them are on 1.16. See, this was floor, right? 16.17 was floor. So under floor, like almost none are below floor. Here, a few are still late to upgrade, but most of them managed to get to the floor version or minor versions above. Nobody really updated to those. A few are going to 1.17.5, and me, that just means my CLI version is on that 1.17.5. Yeah, I have the CLI version of 1.17.5. So not just stake, also RPC nodes must be 95%. Anyway, yeah, those are then software versions that don't have the stake weight yet with a feature set. So a feature set is a bunch of feature gates. Yeah, okay, cool. I mean, so that was an excursion to feature gates on Solana. And now let's have a look at this one, now that it's available on mainnet. And we'll play around with it on devnet, because again, I'm still cheap. But you can do all of the things that I'll do today on mainnet as well now. So that's cool. Right, how do we get started? Let's see. Does this thing have an extend? Probably in deploy, program deploy. There is no extend here, but Solana CLI add Solana program extend subcommand. Hehe, that's what I need. So there will be an extend command, or there is one. And we can also have a look at what that actually does. There, it creates a transaction with an instruction to the BPF loader, and extend program instruction with the program pub key, the payer, and additional bytes, which is the amount of additional bytes, I assume. Yep. And fee pays with the payer, signs it, and sends that transaction. I mean, pretty simple, I guess. So the extend is a subcommand of, because it's on a different level than the deploy. The deploy is one further out. Wait, there's program And then we have a subcommand deploy. And then there's still a deploy. Ah, that has been removed. Okay. It's now Solana program deploy, not Solana deploy anymore. Okay, that makes sense. So this is just deprecated stuff. Cool. So it is on the same level as the deploy. Perfect. So we would be able to say stuff like Solana program extend, except in my version, I can't do that because I don't have that version that is currently on GitHub. Well then, let's get that version. Let's get it. That's a big repository. Let's see. I love it how fast that is. When you compare that to my old computer, that was like, took half an hour to get that much done. Oh no, something didn't work. Installing more and more dependencies. What could possibly go wrong? There we go. We're building. And we're done. Nice. Took me 1 minute as compared to half an hour on my other computer. Cool. So now I should have, yeah, well, what do I have? Where did it build it to? Target. There's a target. Yeah, we have a target debug. And there we have a Solana. Perfect. So target debug Solana. Wonderful. Program. And the subcommands for our program now have an extend. Nice. Extend the length of an upgradable program to deploy larger programs. Deploy larger programs. Yes, we want to do that. Okay, but we haven't even talked about why we want to do that or what that actually does. I mean, you can defer it from the name. It extends the program to make it bigger. But why the hell would we want that? Okay, maybe let's do an example. Maybe let's deploy a program and see what happens and stuff. For that, should I go Anchor or should I go native? Native would probably make more sense. Do I remember how that worked? Haha, no. Good that there is soldev.app/course, which is where I always go to look it up. So we just say cargo init, no, cargo new. Cargo new library extendable program. So we have our extendable program, which is just a Rust program for now. So what we want to add is a dependency for Solana. So cargo add Solana program. Yeah, it adds it in version 1.17.6. Works for me. That's a relatively new one. And then we don't want that stuff. We want an actual program. Just gonna put a hello world program here. Please extend me. And then we can cargo build SPF. Does that work? I love how fast this is. I'm used to waiting a long time for this to compile while I'm recording videos especially. This is money well spent on a new computer. There we go, Solana program. And we got a few warnings. Yeah, but I don't really care about that. Cool, that's that. And we have that in target. But where's the thing that I can deploy now? Lib extendable program. Is it that? Not sure. Yes, we get an airdrop. And then Solana program deploy. Let's see what program location required if buffer is not supplied. Yes, okay. Executable program's address must be a key pair for initial deploys. Path to program.so. So we're searching for an SO file. I don't have an SO file. Let's see if cargo build BPF does something different. No, it does the same thing. Ah, could it be that you're missing the lib section in the cargo toml? Maybe. Could be. Could be. Did that change anything now? Yes. Now I have the extendable program.so. Haha. Okay, I was missing this part. Okay, good to know. Let's get another key pair. XP. So this is going to be the program. So we say Solana program deploy. What was it? Program ID is the XP. And then path to the file is target SBF release ExtendProgram.so. Did I mean program? Of course I meant program. Nice, XPCs ready. So just for reference, this thing here, if we have a look at that, that's 35.4 kilobytes. So about 36,000 bytes. Okay. Cool. And we've deployed this. So this program should now be on DevNet under this address. Yes, it is. And the executable data is at 5EN6. Cost me half a sol to deploy. Size in bytes is 72,000 bytes. So about a bit more than twice the size of the file. Can download this. Haven't done this ever. That's the executable that I just downloaded. Why not? Let's have a look at that. Actually, I think I might be making this too difficult for myself. I can just say Solana account and then put in that account. That should also list me the bytes. There we go. So see, so that's what I expect, right? About half the account is just going to be empty. So there's a bunch of zeros, 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 zeros. Is the entire account empty? Don't tell me the entire account is empty. That would not make any sense. What's happening? Why is it all empty? How far do I need to scroll? Up! There we go. So up until here. Up until 8D. Okay, here I have some data. There is also still a bunch of zeros. Memcopy dynamic. I've actually never looked at like on-chain programs before. But yeah, that looks more like something useful. Oh, and here we have, this looks more like, I would not have expected that to be so like readable. Extendable program. Lol, even my name made it on here. And here we have a bunch of bytes again. So this could be instruction data stuff. This is more what I expect bytecode to look like. Okay, maybe, I don't know. Hello world, please extend me. That seems to be constants. So yeah, it's definitely my program, I can see that. But yeah, that seems to be my program. So from 0 to 8D we said, and the entire account is 11, and 11 it's like 1 because that's hex. That's 16 something, and half of that is 8. Yeah, half of 16 is 8. So yeah, half the account is empty. Now I'm curious about several things. One, how does that look? Do I have a hex editor? Okay, we hex dump this. We also get to 8D. And that also ends with 1. And that's probably the exact same that we've seen here as well, right? 4349, 4349, 4E59. 4E59. So it's a bit different because little endian versus big endian probably, but pretty much that's that. That's just that file directly copied over. Oh, I can't even get to the start. I can say length just the first, I don't know, 1000. 457F. Okay, there's first probably a length indicator. But then eventually we get the 457F. So in the other file I would now see 46, 4C, 46, 4C. So yeah, starting here, this is just the SO file, the shared object. Wow. Essentially what we learned is that in this program executable data account, we basically just copy the SO file and keep half of the account empty for updates. Let's see if I did an update with something new and I cargo build SBF again, and then Solana program deploy again. Let's actually do the same as above. We deploy the same thing, so it should now overwrite that. So it should now deploy the same program with the updated code. Yep, there we go. It's ready. So this is my program. So a few seconds ago, we did this. We upgraded our program. We had a buffer account that we removed, but this one stayed the same. The program data account stays the same. Did I initialize that in the first one? Deploy with max data length. Max data length is 7256. So max data length, is that something that that I apparently provide that, the max data length. That's in the instruction data somewhere. I wonder where this comes from though. So this is the initial deploy, by the way. Hold on, let me deploy again. So the data account never changes. That's always the same. And here I first fund this account and then I remove it again. So basically I create a temporary account where I write my file to this buffer account, and then I write from the buffer into this data account. But yeah, that data account, it's involved in those instructions, and the size doesn't change, but the contents does. Now one more thing I want to try, and for that I'm going to create an anchor program. So now I have a, standard anchor program here. Now we should have the extendable anchor SO, and that file is how big? That's 310,000 bytes. So if I do a anchor deploy, I'm really curious. There we go. We deployed it to this program address, and this is the executable data account. And this one is how big? 356,000. So it's by far not twice as big as the data, but definitely bigger. 2.5 sol it cost me to deploy this. But maybe Anchor also changed that by now, because they used to be more expensive to deploy. Come on, give me 5 more, please. Fuck. Solana program close. Does that just work? No. Oh yes, but I have to use the bypass warning flag. I want my sol back mainly. There. 2.48 sol reclaimed. Nice. So if I refresh that, that account will now be gone. But the program account still exists. Executable, no. It's a closed program account. For security reasons, this stays on there forever. And I can't deploy a new program here anymore. But if I deploy another one, let's get myself a key pair XA for anchor lol. If I do it manually with Solana program deploy, and yes, we'll get to the extend eventually, but first we want to understand what's happening here if we deploy programs. Program ID is that XA, and then I deploy the extendable anchor target SBF release extendable anchor SO. If I do it manually, just with Solana program deploy, let's see if that does something different. So we've now deployed this XA program, and this one has an executable data account here, which has a size of nice, of 621 bytes, 1,000 bytes, 621,000 bytes. So, okay, so depending on how I deploy the program, it reserves more or less space. So it seems to me that the CLI just takes twice the size, because file size of this, where is it here, is 310 and double is 620. So the CLI takes just double the size, because it had to do that because programs used to not be extendable. Like this size was fixed. Once it's that size, it doesn't change anymore. And that can lead to problems when you want to, deploy a new version of your program that needs more bytecode. Let's see if I can go the other way around, if I can make it smaller than it needs to be. Can I do a XS for small? Small fucking program. For that, I'm gonna check if that thing has like a max length. Yeah, max length. Maximum length of the upgradable program. Default is twice, it even says it here, twice the length of the original deployed program. And if I deploy with Anchor, then Anchor just adds a bit, apparently, or whatever. So that's cool, we learned something already. So I can say max length, and we need at least 1 or 11,000. So that will be already pretty much the minimum. Let's try if I can do that. Oh, max len, my bad. There we go. That does not look good. I guess I don't have enough. So shit, it's all gone. How much did I pay for this account? Well, yeah, 4.32 sol. Guess I gotta close that. So Solana program, close XA, and bypass warning, of course. I just cannot type, and I'm aware what I'm doing. Besides, it's just definite. We closed it. 4.3 sol reclaimed, which means we should now be able to deploy it again with a max length of this. Program ID needs to be different, of course, because that other one has been closed. It's again 308 transactions, so it's not fewer transactions. Okay, that program is now deployed. Check it. That program has now this executable data account, which has this size. So the max length plus 45 bytes apparently that it needs for something else. That's also what we saw when we had a look at that, the first 42 bytes, I guess, until here. Is that 45 bytes? 4, 8, 16, 32, 40, 44, 45. Yeah, that's 45 bytes. Those first 45 bytes is something else that it puts as prefix in the account. Maybe it stores the program or the update authority or something in there. Whatever. But the interesting thing is that we're now limited here in the size. And it worked because, well, our binary is not bigger than this. Solana account for this, there is a few 0 bytes in the end. So we have a bit of buffer, but not much. So let's run into problems. Because what if I actually add functionality in here now? Yeah, getting there. Let's log another important. And boom, suddenly we're above that. So we have now over 311,000 bytes for our Anchor program because we just added stuff to the program. And now we will not be able to deploy this anymore. If I try to deploy this now, let's see what it gives me. Sending transactions. Account data too small for instruction. So it put the data on a temporary account, but then it turned out that it can't write that from the temporary account into the program data account because account data too small for instruction. Oh man, and I need to recover that. Just as a practice, let's go through that. Solana keychain recover. And I want it out to recovered JSON. That's the seed phrase. Yes. So apparently this was the account. Let's see what's at that account. Yep, that's where my 2.1 sol went. 4, do you remember that amount? 311 and 81, not quite, but that was the size here. 311, 144 plus 45 is, what's 44 plus 45? 89. 79, 81, whatever. Maybe it's not the exact entire thing, maybe it's whatever, but that ballpark. So that's where it wrote all of the data from our shared output file into this buffer account, right? Because we need a lot of transactions to write it in there. And then we could not deploy this program. So first we send a lot of transactions into this buffer account that the actual deployment is one transaction. That's important. There's just one transaction. We don't want to write directly to the data account, of course, because we can only write so many bytes per transaction because of transaction size limits, right? So that's why we have this buffer account. We write it into the buffer account and then have one transaction or one instruction that copies from the buffer account into the actual data account. Because reading the program can a lot of bytes, right? The program can read all the bytes, copy them over in the other account and persist it there. So that's just one instruction, the final instruction. And that final instruction or the final transaction, that failed because the count data is too small for instruction. Isn't that fun? And now we would be screwed. Without that feature that was just enabled recently, we would now be screwed because we cannot change the data account, the size of it. However, aren't we glad that this feature has been enabled and we can actually enlarge or extend our program account, the program data account? So let's finally have a look at how that works now that we have the motivation lined out why it's helpful. Because right now I can't deploy my program. I can literally not deploy this code because my program just is too big. But I have my recovered key pair, program deploy buffer, the buffer sign, intermediate buffer account to write data to. If I would deploy this, I could say buffer was my recovered JSON. Then it wouldn't write all that it does actually write all of them again. But at least it doesn't create a new one. And then again, it's just gonna fail because it can't put that into the program. So we need the program extend. And this CLI doesn't have it. Also, I can't type program. And extend is not a thing. But that's why I have deployed it at Solana target. So here I have a program extend. Right. And it requires the following. Let's actually just open the help. Whoops. It requires program ID additional bytes. So just number of bytes that will be allocated for the data account. That's confusing. It says additional bytes and number of bytes. So is it number of additional bytes or is it total number of bytes? This message here is confusing because reading this, I would assume it's the total, and reading this, I would assume it's just how many I would add. So, well, let's do that then. What was my program ID? XS. And then additional bytes. Well, let's add 1,000 bytes because I don't have much sol anymore, and see if that works or if it needs the total. There we go. Okay, so it extended by 1,000 bytes. I would change that message. That's confusing. But anyway, so we added 1,000 bytes. Let's look at this. There must have been an instruction here. Let's look at this transaction. It does an upgradable loader unknown instruction. The Explorer apparently doesn't know yet what it's called. It's an extend program and it adds 1,000 bytes. So it does a system program transfer, for the rent. And that's about it. So it just transfers to this account. Remember, that's the data account for that program. And if we have a look at that now, it now has 31245. So from 311, it went to 312. So we have extended it. Isn't that fun? We changed the data size of the data account of a program. That was not possible before the BPF loader supported that, because that account is owned by the BPF loader. It doesn't say that here directly, but some other Explorer might say that. SourceCan. Yeah, you say that the owner is the BPF upgradable loader. So only that guy can change the bytes. And if that guy doesn't support it, then it ain't working. Anyway, so we updated it. We extended the program, which means that now I should be able to deploy the program with a bigger size onto the same program ID. So in the same program data account, this should now be big enough. Just about, but should be big enough. Finalizing. There we go. Deployed. Nice. Cool stuff. Because now that it's that big, can actually hold that data. And it was just updated a few seconds ago here from my recovered account. So we get back the sol from the buffer account because we don't need it anymore. And it was successfully written into the program data account because it's writable. And the BPF upgradable loader wrote all those bytes from the buffer account into the actual program data account. That's cool. And that's what the program extend command is useful for. Nice. And really all that's happening is that the BPF upgradable loader is called. Let's look at that upgrade again. So the upgradable loader is called with the ExtendProgram instruction. And you can build that instruction yourself. We saw it earlier. It's really not that difficult to build such a transaction. And I mean, I could do that manually if I want to do that from my front end or TypeScript or my Rust program or whatever. I could build a transaction and do that. But really, in most cases, doing it with a CLI like this with extend, that's sufficient, because how often are you going to do that? Not that many times, right? Just if you run into that issue, you get out the Solana CLI and you extend your program and then you're fine again. I don't think it's necessary that we build that transaction manually. I don't think you would. I mean, maybe we would learn something while doing it, how that needs to be called. But at the same time, I don't judge it to be that important, so I'm not going to go through that. I'm assuming that this change comes to the CLI soon. I mean, it's already in the GitHub. If you want to use it now, you just need to build it yourself. But it's going to come to the Solana CLI eventually. Probably by the time you watch it, you can just type Solana program and expand and it will work. Yeah, also the Explorer will probably update this soon. It's all still quite new, is what I'm saying. But that's what I want to do. I want to talk about the new exciting things that you can now do on Solana because the feature has been activated. There. The feature has been activated. Yeah, and more features to come. I'm gonna end here. So we did learn a bunch here. We learned what feature gates are and why we update Solana like this. We learned how deployment works, like more in detail with the buffer accounts and the data account. And we saw what happens if we can't extend our program anymore. We just can't deploy new versions. And therefore, we had to use the ExtendProgram instruction to allocate more space on our data account to actually be able to deploy that program. So yeah, we learned a lot and it's nice. And I just like talking about like Solana native stuff because that's the real, the core stuff. I love it. Now we can finally extend all our old programs. Like Metaplex had a huge problem with this. This was highly relevant for the metadata program. They couldn't add more features because they reached maximum program size. But now with this feature, they can actually update it. So that's cool. Maybe one more thing why this is useful. Because we can now extend our program, we don't need to deploy the program initially with like double the size it needs. So we can be a lot more cost efficient with our programs because we don't need to worry that we might need a bigger program in the future. We can just keep it as large as it needs to be. And only if we really need to make it bigger, we extend it for the amount that it needs to be bigger. That allows much more flexibility and less upfront cost, which, especially with rising salt prices, is really great. Yeah, I hope that you got value out of this video. If you did, give it a like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And then I'll leave you here with some other videos to watch. And until next time, when we're gonna discuss some other new features. Exciting stuff. I like it.